Okay, so now for the rules on how to or when to move the 0% line if price doesn't retrace back to the 50% line before going through the 0% line. Okay, in the rules it says dealing with fibs where price does not retrace to 50% before surpassing the 0% line. If you have drawn a fib which retraces but not quite to the 50% line or close to it, and then goes past the 0% line, then one of two things can happen. You either move the 0% to match the new pivot, or you draw an extended price fib. Okay, first I'm going to go over how to move and when to move the 0% line. Okay, if price makes a pivot and retraces a bit, but doesn't get close to the 50% line, and then breaks the 0% line, the following reasons would lead you to move the 0% line to the new pivot made. The first one is, price breaks the 0% line, does not get to half the distance between 0% and negative 23.6%, and then retraces back to the positive 23.6 retracement line. Then you leave the 100% line where it is and move the 0% line to the new pivot made past the original 0% line. So let's look at an example. Let's say for whatever reason I had a fib that was drawn from this pivot low to this pivot high. Okay, and as you can see here, price goes through the 0% line without ever coming back to the 50% retracement, goes through the 0% line, and then retraces back to the positive 23.6% line, which is the number one stated here. See, price breaks the 0% line, does not go to half the distance between 0 and negative 23.6, which would be between these two. Okay, and then retraces back to positive 23.6%, so goes past it, retraces to 23.6 retracement line. Then you leave the 100% line where it is, leave this here, the pivot low, and move the 0% line to the new pivot made past the original 0% line, to the new pivot or to the new high that was made here. Okay, the high is here, so I would just move my 0% line to the new high. Okay, so as you can see, price retraces here. It still gives me time to, you have to be sort of quick here, because once it gets to the 23.6% line, you move the fib, and it still leaves you a little bit of time to place your order at 13.1475 if the fib or the new fib where you move the line meets the criteria specified in rule number 1, which in this case it does not, because it's just 3.75 points the distance between the pivots, so still you will not take a trade here. Okay, now on to number 2. It states or the second scenario would be if price breaks the 0% line, it does get past half the distance between 0% and negative 23.6%, and then retraces back to the 0% retracement line. Then again, you leave the 100% line where it is and move the 0% line to the new pivot made past the original 0% line. Okay, which is the case here. As you can see, price retraced, didn't get quite to the 50% level, so it doesn't make it to the 0% line, to the 50% retracement line, and then it breaks the 0% line, gets to at least or past half the distance between the 0% and negative 23.6%, which in this case it does. You see, it gets past half the distance here, gets to the negative 23.6% line, and then retraces to the 0% line. Then you can move the 0% line to the new pivot made or the new high that was made right here. So as soon as I see price retrace back to the 0% line, I would move the line to this new high right here. Okay, then as you can see, once again, price does not retrace back to the 50% level, but instead it breaks the 0% line. It doesn't get past half the distance between these two levels, and then retraces back to the 23.6% level. So as soon as it retraced back here, I would move the 0% line again to the new high that was made. This is according to the rule number 1 on moving the 0% line. I move it again here. Okay, I check to see if it meets the criteria for rule 1. The distance between the pivots is now 5 points, or 5.25 points. And as you can see, then price does retrace to the 50% level. So I would have gotten my entry here, 13.15.50. Okay, the target would have been reached right here, would have been filled at 13.16.50. And if you were trading with multiple lots, then you would have moved your stop loss to break even, or break even plus 1. If you moved it to break even, then you would not have been stopped out. You would have reached the second target. If you had moved it to break even plus 1, you would have been stopped out at plus 1. Okay, and that's how you determine whether to move the 0% line when a fib does not retrace back to its 50% line before breaking the 0% line.